Thank you, Ms. Mondro. Welcome, everybody. Whether you're with us live tonight on Tuesday or you're streaming this sometime down the road, we're happy to have you. My name is Tony Minestra. I am the director of our college counseling team at DePaul Prep. Behind the scenes, I've got my colleague Samantha Mondro, who's handling all of the tech responsibilities behind the curtain. So couldn't do it without her. We appreciate her. I'm representing our college counseling team tonight. We are a team of 5. If you're not familiar with our team or you haven't been a part of any of our programming through the years, there's a great shot of us down in the lower right-hand corner. Ms. Kaushal, Kate Kaushal, Samantha's in the middle, Kelly Curtin over her right shoulder, and then Nicole Kucera on the other side. So that's our team. That's the college counseling team. I'll share with you our department vision, if that helps kind of set the stage for what we try to do as a program. We believe we have one of the most comprehensive post-secondary planning programs that you'll find. It's designed simply from an educational standpoint to support and serve what is a very diverse student population with a lot of different cool ideas. It's a multi-year program, freshman through 12th grade. It's rooted in a student-focused approach. And you'll hear a lot of terms as you get to know our department. We're very value-focused in what we do and how we focus our work. Our intention is really to lift young learners, right? And kind of move them towards and guide them towards their goals. That's kind of our department vision. All right, just a few high-level ideas of what our mission looks like in the college counseling team. The word empower is a really big deal for us. We want to make sure that we're empowering your child to lead their own process. They're going to identify their post-secondary priorities, again, through a 4-year multi-layer process, right? Our goal is to align their college search and where they land post-high school with their values and their vision for what they see themselves to be in the world. And we hope to lead them towards that. We really want families and students to understand the process. That can seem overwhelming at times. We want students to be very well armed with all the information they may need as they attack this college process. They should confidently lead their own process. We are guides. We offer counsel in the college decision-making process, but ultimately it's our young learners that are leading their own search and their own selection with our support. And in the end, if they feel confident in their college choice, I think we've done our job. Our goal is to make sure students feel like it's their choice that they're making, and parents and students alike feel like they've been well supported along the way. Kind of a basic post-secondary perspective we'd like to share with you. We kind of take this approach that if you love your children and value them for more than what their abilities or their outcomes are, you show them they're so much more valuable to you than that quiz they took this afternoon, or that grade in AP Calc, right? Or their college outcomes that they love to post on Instagram, right? The sum of their accomplishments does not overshadow who they are as young people. And we hope that rings true as you help to usher your student through the college choice process. Okay, I'm going to quickly intro our college partners tonight. We're thrilled to have 3 amazing voices supporting us. The model tonight is going to be, I'm going to kind of serve as your MC, and I've got kind of some questions that our team with us is going to kind of answer, and we'll kind of go through in 3 stages, and I'll kind of cue it up. But Karen, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go Jenna, and then we'll go Paul.
Excellent, and good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Vargas. I serve as Dean of Admissions at Wake Forest University. I use she, her, and aya pronouns. And just excited to spend some time with you and share more about the college admissions process. I'm delighted that I could spend the evening with you now that decision release has taken place. And so if you're not familiar with Wake Forest, we're a nationally ranked research institution rooted in the liberal arts experience in the city of Winston-Salem in North Carolina. We'll have more opportunity to chat a little bit more, but hopefully that gives you a little teaser in terms of what to expect. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, and kudos to the team for having such a great group of panelists with you tonight.
Awesome. Jenna.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be with you all tonight. My name is Jenna McCormick. I'm the Illinois Regional Admissions Recruitment Coordinator for the University of Michigan in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. Going into my 7th year working at the University of Michigan, so I've been there for quite some time. And I recruit primarily in the city of Chicago. And I'm really thrilled to talk about college admissions, talk about selective enrollment and selective admissions and what that means, especially within the context of the University of Michigan. So thanks again for having us tonight, and I look forward to chatting with you all.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jenna. And Paul.
Wonderful. Great to be with everyone this evening. My name is Paul Burgess. I'm a proud Tulane alum. I started as an entry-level admission counselor at Tulane probably about 13 years ago. And so it's been lovely to be on the long ride with the university since then, to be able to work with your college counselors and even see some familiar faces here from universities where we've interacted on the road and different countries all over the place. Tulane is a wonderful research-based university located in the city of New Orleans. By my biased opinion, one of the most rich, influential, and really stimulating cities in the country. And that's so much a part of Tulane's mission and core. So it'll be wonderful to share maybe some slices of humble pie and some fresh doses of reality with you all this evening.
I love it. Great. Thank you so much. Before we jump in, I wanted to use this opportunity to plug a few future events. If you have not already, if you're joining us for the first time, we have an extensive library of archived events on our college planning page. I would encourage you to check out the DePaul Prep College planning page. All of our slide decks from the past 2 to 3 years are there. Our video stuff is on there. If you are a parent or a guardian of a freshman or sophomore at DePaul, our last coffee and conversation session is coming up. That'll be the 2nd week of April, I believe. And we're going to welcome our friends, our partners from Compass to talk about the landscape of standardized testing. So that'll be well timed. That's right near our all-school testing day. So that'll be perfect. Our college fair, which has become just a really cool dynamic event. Jenna, I know you've been in the past. That'll be April 14th. We're excited to welcome 130 different colleges and universities from around the country and around the world. That's for sophomores and juniors and their families. And then towards the end of the year, we're going to do another online Pews. It's about jumpstarting your college plans for the summer. And that'll be featuring best practices for sophomores and juniors going into the summer. How can they sort of like lay the foundation for a solid college search for the years ahead? So those are just some plugs for programming coming up. All right. Okay, we're going to go off deck. I've got my questions queued on a different tab. So we're going to break tonight up into kind of 3 categories. The first is sort of questions related to the application process. The second is we're going to dig into kind of the evaluation process a little bit more. And then the third tier will be more about institutional identity and institutional fit and how important that is in the process. But if I could lead out, this is a selective panel, right? We've curated this list of speakers to be representative of a certain style of school, right? Certainly not representative of the entire universe of college options, but this panel is speaking to a specific style of school. I might ask each of you to kind of reflect a little bit. We'd consider all of your schools highly selective in some way. Can you help our families understand what it means to be considered highly selective from a volume standpoint in terms of applications and admit rate? How do you define selective from your perspective? And any order you guys like to go in.
I'm happy to jump in. So at Tulane, we would probably say we fit into that highly selective base as an institution. So we receive about 34,000 applications in a given year. We'll offer somewhere around 4,500 offers of admission total. So that's about a 13 or 14% admit rate if you have your abacus out. And from there, we'll end up with a freshman class of about 2,000. So the numbers sort of break down. Tulane has a really open policy in terms of receiving applications. We're on the Common App, and we do not charge an application fee. So I think for that reason, that probably really influences the high number of applications we receive.
I appreciate that, Paul. And I'll simply add that at Wake Forest, for us, receiving 20,000 applications with an admit rate at about 20% for an incoming class, roughly at about 1,450 students. We review applications through a holistic lens. So it's not one factor that we're looking for. Really, it is through a variety of different factors, a variety of different elements that we're looking and seeking to bring to the university. And so while highly selective, we're looking to curate a class that speaks to who we are as a university, as an institution, not just based on major or an SAT or an ACT score, but really curating and working through the application process so that we're attracting students who are a good fit to our institution. But by the numbers, 20,000 is not an insignificant number. And I personally actually touch about 75 to 80% of all the applications that come to the university before a decision is finalized. So a lot of good work that happens behind the scenes. Jenna?
Yes, I will round things out. So at the University of Michigan, we get a lot of applications every year, increased numbers every year. Each year is record breaking for us. And so this past year, we did receive about 110,000 applications for an incoming class size of about 7,000 students. So we typically offer around 15 to 16,000 students admission in hopes of yielding a class of about 7,500. So that number is pretty strict. We try to squeeze in as much as we can, but the fact of the matter is that we get so many qualified applicants, but just not enough space. Students are applying that are at the top of their high schools, amazing academics, well-rounded, strong interests. Those are all things that we look for. And we also utilize that holistic review process as well, just taking into consideration that it's not always about the academics, but it's also about campus fit. So I always tell students, when you're applying, don't just think about the academics, but also think about how you can see yourself on the campus, and that will be assessed. And that's something that we strongly look for. So it does put our selectivity around 17 to 22% on any given year. But we just hope that it gets easier as the years go by. We have a very large team of about 40 counselors, 40 admissions counselors.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm going to split my attention. I've got a question, Karen, for you and Paul, and then Jen, I've got a different question that'll kind of serve your different styles of applications. So for Paul and Karen, can you talk to us and our families a little bit about the role that early decision plays in your application process? And just for those on the call that may not be familiar with it, just describe what that means, or ED, or early decision, and how it plays a factor in your admission choices.
Yeah, absolutely. So early decision is a binding agreement and contract that is signed by the student, their parents or guardians, as well as the high school counselor or some sort of high school staff member, that commits a student to attending the university if they are admitted. So it's really putting all of your eggs in one basket. It's a real declaration and a love letter to a singular institution during any early decision round. And so because of that professed love, I think there's a lot of things we can infer from that. Universities tend to have a higher admission rate for students who do apply early decision. And so you may ask why. Well, everybody loves a sure thing, right? For any of us, whether you're talking about having 7,500 students on campus or 3,000 or 4,000, really getting the equation right and having every bed filled but not overfilled, and every classroom seat taken but no one left standing in a corner is a really helpful process because it maximizes the experience and then, of course, revenue for the university. So it is helpful sometimes to be able to build a portion of your class from early decision. I'd say on the other side of things, there's a lot you can infer from a student who is willing to make that commitment to your institution. They've self-selected in a way themselves as a good fit. They've probably done a lot of research on the university. And what we usually find with our early decision students is they're that much more likely in the first week of campus to really be a student leader and to see the rest of the class rally behind them with their confidence and institutional based knowledge. So it's great to be able to build in a decent portion of the class with students like that. Now, that being said, Tulane has early decision 1 with a deadline in November, as well as early decision 2 with a deadline in January. And in total, about half of our incoming students will be offered admission through early decision. So about half of our freshmen have come through one of those 2 agreements. We ask that when a student's admitted that they then sort of withdraw all other applications they may have submitted from any other institution. So applying early decision is not really something to do to then wait and keep on hearing back from other institutions and weigh your options. It's a really, you're in, your college process is done likely in December, you submit your deposit, and you move on with the rest of your senior year. So that's my 2 cents.
Great.
That's a great overview, Paul. I think for many students, when they're thinking about the early decision process, it's important to recognize that statistically speaking, more students, right, when they're applying through an early decision process, have a higher probability, a higher chance of admission. And that's no secret because, as Paul emphasized, right, you're putting all your eggs in this one basket. It is your love letter to the institution. And if you apply and are admitted, you're going to commit to the institution. At Wake Forest, we have a little bit of a different interpretation to the early decision process, and that is that we are a rolling early decision institution, which means that we release the decision in a rolling experience. So the application for Wake Forest becomes available early part of August. Now, we don't tell students the first week in August is when you need to submit the application, but we allow them to utilize between August and November through our early decision 1 rolling decision process to submit their application at various points. And we tend to roll out decisions within every 6 to 8 weeks. And so those eager beavers who start a little bit earlier here in North Carolina, we begin classes the 2nd week in August. And so there are students already thinking about the college process as early as August 1st. And so we make that accessible and available to students. We respect the policy at the school. And so if they're not ready to submit materials until September, we want to respect that process and policy. And we encourage students to speak to their counselor and make sure that they know and understand when deadlines are in place so that they can submit, if they're choosing to, through the early decision process, an application that best represents them, not just an early application, but an application that is well developed and showcases their best self. I also emphasize to families, when you're thinking about the financial aid process and considering an early decision institution, it's important to ask the question. So what happens if I don't receive the financial aid package I was thinking about? Or what if I'm looking to compare financial aid packages? What does that mean? And what does that look like? For us, we work with our families and our students to ensure that they know and understand that regardless of which round they apply through, early decision 1, early decision 2, early action for first generation students, or regular decision, that they know that they will receive the same offer of financial aid throughout all of those rounds. Now, it's also important to know that for us, if we have a student who is a rock star and we know that we would have admitted in any round, including a student off of the wait list, we tend to offer them the benefit of the doubt in that early decision round to say, you know what? You wrote to us that love letter. You made that commitment to us, and we want to offer you a spot in the incoming class. So it's a thoughtful process. It's an intentional process. And I would encourage every student who might be thinking about early decision to make sure that they're having the conversation at home with their family and with their school counselor so that they can make a well-informed decision by the time that senior year rolls around.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. So Jenna, I'm going to ask you to speak for every public institution in America. No, I'm just kidding. But if you could give your perspective from obviously what we consider a highly selective public, what's your perspective on in the admission process, considering in-state, out-of-state, what that looks like for a mix? Because Karen, I believe, used the term curate a class, and I love that term. I'm going to steal that, Karen. I'm going to grab that and use it in all my presentations. But Jenna, maybe from your perspective, a school that does not feature ED, right, uses an early action, regular decision deadline. But considering in-state, out-of-state, we look at schools like Texas, Virginia, North Carolina. I put Michigan in that group, right? These sort of like excellent public institutions that are going to serve their state, of course. But what does that look like from your perspective? All of our families are out of state. How does that read for you?
Yes. So as far as it relates to Michigan, we do recognize there's a lot of interest outside of the state of Michigan. Students are applying to us from all over the country and all over the world, but specifically for our students within the US, we try to keep admission as close to 50-50 as we can. To your point, Tony, we are an in-state facing institution. We are a flagship here in Michigan. So we do have a little bit of a preference to recruit our in-state kids here within the state. As far as enrollment goes, we do admit 49.5% of our students from out of state, 50.5% of our students from in-state. So again, trying to keep it as close to 50-50 as possible, but recognizing that as a flagship, we have to have that preference for our in-state kids. And that's just how the cookie crumbles. We wish that we could keep it 50-50 and that we could keep it a little bit higher, or recruit more out of state, but just with the numbers being what it is. To Karen's point, we are also curating a class, and we're also building this thoughtful class where we try to have as much representation across the country and around the world, but also representation of each of the counties in the state of Michigan. So it is a balancing act, but we do what we can.
Yeah. Make sure you give a little love to Berrien County if you're looking at Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely, Berrien County.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for those on the call, that's why I'm right in there. So. All right, so that's a great segue. Thank you, Jen. It's like we planned this. Talk about curating a class. So I'm going to kind of move through some application factors. Paul, you made a really good point earlier. While academic performance is a strong indicator of success in college, there are other pieces to the application. But I'm going to ask the academic performance question first, and then we'll get into the other stuff. So each of you are admitting, less than a quarter of the students who apply to your institution, right? So we're clearly looking at students who are presenting a strong history of academic achievement, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means in terms of course selection? Like, we've got, I don't know, there's 100 kids in our school in per class over a 4.0, right? And I'm sure that's very similar across the country, right? So how do you, when you're looking at transcripts, how do transcripts tell a story? Is the term I kind of use. How do they tell a story in your admission process? Maybe Karen?
Well, I think Paul was going for it, and then the dreaded microphone.
Oh,
click the wrong button.
That's okay.
So especially if you're looking for a transcript to tell a story, many of the stories that we receive are students who have taken all the classes that they think or are perceived to be the most difficult or most rigorous. That's a nice story, but we do see a lot of that. I think there's a lot of room for other stories where students are able to showcase the courses they're really interested in and really passionate about, and have still been able to challenge themselves either with some sort of larger scale research paper or work, or that rigor will really shine through in the letters of recommendation. And maybe they still happen to take a few of those higher level college prep courses. I'll admit a bit of my ignorance to the school. I don't recruit in this region as much, but whether it's AP, IB, dual enrollment, or any of those perceived sort of college prep courses, it's great to still have a few of those in there, but we're definitely not filtering through applicants and just looking for those who have made it to AP Physics C and BC Calc and things like that. Sort of to your point of having 100 students per class with above a 4.0, we could probably all fill our classes with students who have gotten to, that absolute terminal level in any of those rigorous courses. That makes for a fairly boring overall cohort. I think of us in a lot of ways as almost being this like sim lord type task of really cultivating this class and picking and choosing to make a really unique and stimulating group of students. And if we only took students with the same credentials, it wouldn't be that utopia that we really, or that academic utopia that we aim to design. So there is a lot of room for selection, but it should be selection based on a story and something true to you. And we hate for that story to be, I took AP Stat because it was easier than Calc. It should be something much more like, well, I took AP Stat because I was also really interested in a history or a sociology course, and I was thinking of ways that I could use my knowledge in statistics to talk about how past historic event could predict a future one or something like that. Wow, bravo. We love to see that. But the story also has to come through in the end.
I love that, Paul. And I'll piggyback on his comments simply to add that, we have the opportunity to travel to so many wonderful places and meet incredible students. And while I don't recruit in your area, I don't recruit specifically DePaul students. For me, it's important to know what the curriculum options are. And so if I were to open up Tony's application to Wake Forest, right? And I would look to see, there are college prep courses, there are honors courses, there's AP offered, there's IB. It's important for me to have that context and know what's available to a student within the context of their high school. And we're all doing that very intentionally. It's also important to know that we don't compare students to other schools. We're not comparing students, domestically and internationally. I know Paul spends quite a bit of time abroad. And so for us, it's really important to look at students within the context of their high school, within the curriculum that's available to them. And so we ask a lot of questions along the way. We look at the school profile. That's why that piece as part of the application is so critical. If we have questions, we call the college counselor and say, I've never seen this before. Tell me more about this new course or this new curriculum experience. Sometimes we might ask the question, why did a student take IB versus AP or vice versa? And tell us more about that journey for the student. And we ask those questions because as we're molding and shaping each of our classes, we're looking to see that students are intellectually curious, that they're globally aware, that they can read and write at the collegiate level, right? Have the ability to do the work at our institutions. But we also want them to thrive on our campuses. And so we're looking at various elements throughout the application process to ensure that we're working and admitting students who will do well at our particular institutions. And, I've had a few days now that we've released decisions and a lot of questions around like, why was I not? And I often remind students that you've done nothing wrong in this process and you will find your home wherever that home might be. And sometimes it takes a little bit of negotiation, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of asking those tough questions, right? To ensure that both the student and the institution are finding a good fit with one another.
Awesome. Anything to add, Jenna?
No, I think Paul and Karen both covered it. Yeah.
I love it.
Nailed it.
I love Karen's point about the student and the institution finding their right fit. And I know there might be some 9th and 10th graders in the room. And I do think it almost needs to be said or emphasized. again, that a university's first priority is to meet its own needs, not the needs of a student or a high school. And we have so many competing priorities based on new programs, new facilities, new athletics, board members, revenue goals, all of these different things. And as much as sometimes an admission decision is seen as like an anointing of a student for good work or something like that, universities really have to serve their own interests above all. And so this is very much, when it doesn't go your way, it's not a rejection of you. It's a university looking out for itself.
And that did bring up a point for me to mention. Remember, there's always more than one way to get to where you want to be. If you know that Tulane is where you want to end up and you're not admitted, you can apply as a transfer student. Explore transfer admissions. You can start off somewhere and you can ultimately transfer to wherever it is that you want to end up. So keep that in mind as you're going through the process. A delay is just a delay, even though you might have been denied.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Y'all got O'Hare. You're used to delays.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right. Hey, test scores. Some of our families are entering a time when we're kind of thawing out of the test optional universe. All three of your universities, correct me if I'm wrong, are still operating in 2025 and 26 as test optional. Can you explain briefly, potentially for students who are not in that junior senior year mix right now, but maybe freshmen and sophomores, if they like to consider themselves not a great test taker, right? We hear that a lot. What does that mean when you remove a score from the evaluation process? How does that change? How does that change what you're focused on in the application realistically?
So this is a popular question, and I often find families trying to navigate, what's the best approach. And I think it's important to recognize that every institution is going to be a little bit different. And so it's important to ask the question, are you test optional? But what other elements do you look at as a test optional institution should be the follow-up question. And so for us as a test optional institution, we believe that a student has multiple ways to showcase their best self. Scores may be one way for a student to do that if they choose to apply as a non-test optional student, so a testing candidate, or they can choose a variety of other elements. And so for us, we believe that test scores are only one part of the process, not the defining part of the process. Now, statistically speaking, we recognize that in this new test optional world, with lots of our peers having gone test optional, that the students who are applying test optional, and we see about 50% of our students right now applying as test optional candidates, are applying with higher test scores. Now, I can share with you, when I first arrived at Wake Forest 7 years ago, 30% of our applicant pool applied as a test optional candidate. Now we're at 50%. During the pandemic, we were as high as 65, close to 70%. So it shifts each year, and it's contingent upon each applicant pool, right? So each year it changes. The numbers might change, the percentage might change, but ultimately our philosophy as an institution has not. We remain committed to working with students who want to showcase their best self. And if that's a test score as part of your application, we welcome that. It's there to be seen if you submit it. But if you decide it's not a part of your application, you don't feel that those scores represent who you are, whether you scored within the middle 50% range or not, because I have students, believe it or not, who do score within the middle 50% range or on the higher end of the middle 50% range, who come back and say, I don't want to be defined by a score. And it is their right, it's their prerogative to choose that test optional path. We offer students a variety of different ways to showcase their best self. And so that includes a one-on-one interview with an admissions team member. We offer a self-recorded video option so students can record themselves responding to one of our prompts and include that as part of the application. You leave nothing open to interpretation, which is always really cool. And then we also offer our supplemental responses. Some students are better when they have the opportunity to think through their responses. And so we are unapologetic for having a robust supplemental application process. And so we invite students to choose the path, right? Choose your own adventure. Choose the path that works best for you. But every institution is different, and it's important to ask the question early and often.
Great.
So I guess I'd add for Tulane in that, yes, continuing to be test optional. We review a student's academic record and their academic performance and sort of make an overall internal academic rating. And so without a test score, we make that rating purely based on the past 3 years in one semester, perhaps, of your high school transcript and academic record. If you have a test score, that also gets factored into the equation. And so you certainly can have stellar academic performance in high school and receive a really positive academic rating. There's probably always going to be a world, though, where someone has an equally stellar academic record. It's never going to hurt them to have a 1600 on the SAT. So I would still sort of echo Karen's point that, half of our students are applying without test scores and half of our freshmen don't have test scores. So it's not as if we have this requirement. But students oftentimes ask, how do I stand out? How do I stand out? Well, I mean, it's not maybe the most palatable answer, but if half of your peers don't have a test score and you manage to have a great one, no, you don't stand out as 1 in 100, but all of a sudden, of the other 100, 50 don't have this thing that maybe you do have. And so plenty of students are able to sort of pass that academic hurdle and showcase their capability without it. But gradually, schools are going back to requiring testing. It might be something you want to be prepared to take or have a score that you think is somewhat indicative of your academic ability in case institutions do end up requiring it of you. Your academic record, your transcript is still more indicative of student success than a standardized test score. That's a sort of party line that's thrown around all the time. But standardized testing is still indicative of academic success. Maybe not as much so, but it's a different data point that is absolutely statistically significant. And Tulane does have a lot of professional programs. We were founded as a medical school. And I mean, you can't go to medical school without taking a standardized test. You're going to have to do the MCAT and the LSAT and the GRE and a lot of these other ones. So it's not a requirement for now, but I also don't think we're in a world where like all standardized testing is gone.
And Jenna, it's got to be a challenge for a school with 100,000 applications, right? And Michigan does pride itself in reading holistically. I know that that's a big part of what you still do with,
Yes.
3 times as many applications as our friends. How does a school of your size remove a metric as important as test score and still evaluate a student?
Yes, great point. We do still utilize that holistic review. So we are still in the throes of everything from early action all the way to January, reading everything. And test scores can help us assess academic fit, right? They're a good indicator for college readiness that, is all the great things that test scores provide. However, if a student decides not to, they're not penalized in any way. They're still given that same holistic review. We do look more closely at their academics. We'll take a closer look at their last 3 years of high school. If they've submitted, if fall grades are available and they have those on the transcript, we look at those as well. It might also be important to note that within our holistic review, it is also contextual. So we review students within the academic environment of their high school. So my piece of advice is for students to figure out what the average test score is for your high school. Our average ACT at Michigan for last year's class was between a 32 and 35. Maybe you're applying from a school and the average test score, for example, is a 25. You have a 27. No, it's not within our middle 50th percentile, but within the context of the high school, it's a fantastic score, and you should absolutely send that in. So always check to see what the average test score is, SAT, ACT, whatever it is, for your school. And then that way that can help you figure out whether or not it is a score that you should or should not send in. If your test score is not within the 50th percentile of your school, do not send it in. That is my piece of advice for Michigan. And also know that we do super score at Michigan. So if you have multiple test scores that you want to submit, you can submit them all, and we'll take the highest from each one and create a whole new score for you. And also maybe you have strong AP scores, but maybe not a strong SAT score. We do accept AP scores. If you have 4s and 5s, you can submit those as well. And that'll also help us assess your college readiness. So maybe it's not an SAT or an ACT, but it's an AP score. You can send in what you have and we'll assess it accordingly.
Awesome. Now, an additional piece to each of your schools is what we call, you might call it something different. We call it a supplemental essay. And all of your institutions feature it. I know, Karen, you have some really cool ones, right? Wake's kind of known for their cool questions. Maybe briefly, if you can speak to what a supplemental essay means. I will tell you from our perspective, where I find sort of a gap in understanding in our seniors that are applying is how important it is that a college is asking a question specific to their university. And it's not simply just adding 5 to 10 more schools to your list because they're easy to do on the Common App, right? You got to nail that connection piece, right? Like they're asking that question for a reason. Like why Tulane or why Michigan? They're asking that question for a reason. Can each of you kind of give a brief overview of why that's important within the context of how selective each of your schools can be?
Yes, I can start off. With Michigan, obviously, a lot of applications, and you would be surprised how many students have amazing academics, strong test scores, strong grades, all A's, but the Why Michigan essay is about that big. It's only a few sentences,
I
right?
see it all the time.
All the time. So really the point that we're driving home is that it's not just about academic fit, it's also about campus fit. We know that you have strong grades, but why are you applying to Michigan? And even more specifically, why are you choosing this specific school to apply to? Because with Michigan, you don't apply to the school in general. You pick where you want to be considered. If it's engineering, you apply there. If it's nursing, you apply there. For example, if you're applying to engineering, it's got to be more than just you grew up playing with Legos. We see Lego essays all the time for engineering. We see, those types of themed essays, but it really the point of the essay is to challenge you to go deeper. What is it about the mechanical engineering major that stands out to you? What is it about the aerospace engineering major that stands out to you? What we always encourage students to do is to do your research. Look at the websites for all the schools you're applying to. Go to the specific website, look at the courses that are offered, look at what students are doing, research, internships, work that you hope to do with professors. Take the time to go and research it, because when we're reading that Why Michigan essay, our eyes are already trained to know when it's a vague essay or when it's general, or when you're just taking out Michigan, putting in Tulane, and it's flowing the exact same way. You have to be specific. There's no such thing as too specific, in my opinion. You really want to drive home the point of why you are applying to the University of Michigan. And again, if you have an alumni tie, maybe your parents went to Michigan. That's amazing, but it's not about your parents. It's about you. Why are you at this point in your life choosing to apply to the University of Michigan? And really trying to drive the point home of how you can see yourself here. Because that's what we're looking for. We want students who want to be on our campus. You don't have to name specific professors, but at least show us that you've done your due diligence in providing some specific examples as to what you hope to do. And that's not just for Michigan, but wherever you're applying.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I would sort of follow up on that, what Jenna was saying, and almost synthesize two of those points to like specific and personal, right? So on the specific side of things, you should really be writing something that basically ChatGPT cannot produce, right? It should be going really, really in depth. It should not be, in some ways, it should be things that I don't even know about a specific program or university, because it really should be detailed. And sort of to Jenna's point of doing all this extra research, part of the challenge is that you will not have time to do that for all 10 schools that you apply to, but you will have time to do it for your top 2 or 3. And so that's sort of what we're starting to get at. So the specific piece, and then the personal piece as well. So you, not your parents, but also not just a regurgitation of a syllabus. Why does this fit to you? What's the sort of uniting thread between the other activities I read in your application, or some sort of overlap with descriptors or phrasing that I heard from one of your letters of recommendation or your school counselor or something like that. So there's a lot of nuance that comes through in it Tulane puts a lot of weight in it because we don't otherwise have many barriers to applying. I mentioned it's a free and open application on the Common App. So a lot of people just apply to throw in an extra app. And so it's almost like your Why Tulane essay, that supplemental piece, really solidifies for us that this is a very intentional application.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I'm going to round us out by adding 2 additional tips. One, do not worry so much about what you think we want to hear about, and offer who you are in this process. Oh my gosh, the application, there are only but so many items on the application that a student has control over. And so these written pieces are their product that they can share with us, who they are, what they represent, what they bring to the table, and how they can contribute to our campus communities. I often hear from students who are so worried about our top 10 list, which is one of our quirkier questions, right? Like, what do you mean a top 10 list? What kind of top 10 list? Well, you get to have your top 10 list. It could be anything you want. And students agonize. I can't tell you, they just agonize over it. It's supposed to be fun and light, right? And yet students are so worried about what they think that I want to read about, what they think the admission selection committee wants to read about, that they lose themselves in this process. So focus on who you are and focus on putting your best foot forward in this process. And then part 2 in these conversations, it's always really interesting when students are going through the supplemental questions and they're one-dimensional. Right. And so the entire application is all about business. And that's all I know about the student. And I know nothing else except for their interest in business. And I'm picking on business. It's a great major. It's a great program.
Go ahead. You can do that.
But you're not all business, right?
Yeah.
And so allow yourself to engage in this process. Be a little lighthearted, have fun with us. My favorite top 10 list, horrible dad jokes. And I try them on with my kids this past year, and we had a great laugh. And there were a number of jokes that we, will be around the dinner table and we'll share them and kind of remember that moment. And I just tell myself how fun that I could bring, something so special from a student's application and share that with my family and just have that moment of, wow, like I got to see this other side of a student that was stellar academically, right? And was able to have a little bit of fun in this process. So don't forget to have a little bit of fun. Don't be so focused on the one-dimensional path and trying to impress the admissions committee. Be your best self and you'll be pleasantly surprised in the end.
Man, I love it. This idea of authenticity, right? Let your flag fly. Let whatever it is that you are, be that, right? One more question on that topic, Karen, if you don't mind. So those essays are really one of the prime vehicles to tell a story outside of what is essentially like your academic pathway. That's by the time you're applying to Wake or Michigan or Tulane, your academic story is sort of written at that point. But this is a great way to sort of express yourself in the moment as a senior. Another way to do that is through other identity markers, like kind of what you are and what you've been and what you've done and what you're passionate about. I'm curious, maybe from your perspectives, and I know I shared the questions in advance, but I'm going to reframe the activities question to be a little more pointed. How do you find students who are just stacking their activity list with things? Because like you said, Karen, they maybe want to see it through the college's lens. They want to impress the college, right? But how do you find authenticity in your applicants? You're all trying to build a class, right? What do you see that you're looking for in authenticity and genuine passion and pride when you're looking through sort of student stories?
I will say it time and time again. Quality over quantity. I can't emphasize that enough with students. We have so many of these conversations. I'm even having the conversation with my own child who's a junior in high school, that we are going to embrace this process, and my child will be engaged in activities that best fit her, right? It's not what I want. It's not what my husband wants. It's not what her college counselor may want. It is what she wants. And I think that's something that's really impressive and beautiful in this process. I also think that students sometimes they feel overwhelmed, like they have to catch up or they have to, keep up with the Joneses, or if they don't have a specific thing on the application, therefore they are missing out on an opportunity. And I think that's false. We're looking to mold and shape our classes. We're curating our incoming cohort each and every year. And we look to fill seats for a variety of different areas. So it's not one particular thing that we look for, but it's a variety of different elements that we look for. So I like to emphasize to students quality over quantity. I would rather see a student committed to, 3 or 4 things throughout their entire high school experience than have 20 things that they've only done maybe once in their entire high school journey.
Yeah.
A really great thing to commit to as well is a job. I think honestly, just summer employment throughout the semester, things like that make way more of an impact than a service trip to Fiji to go clean turtles or something like that. Like, that's lovely. It's a vacation. And if you want to do that, more power to you. Take the vacation, do it. But don't try to pass off things as like overly remarkable. We've seen it all before. And I think students oftentimes do underestimate how much of an impact that just a job makes. And not necessarily a job trying to shadow a physician or working in your parents' office or something like that. Just a regular old job, and being able to maybe rise through the ranks there. What's pretty impactful is someone who's a shift manager at a restaurant and has found out really successful ways to manage people who are 3 decades older than them in a setting and build a really successful rapport with someone like that. Those are big scale things, more so than a list of the countries that you've been to, or expensive summer programs. I think a lot of those, which seem really shiny and nice on paper, if basically you can get in, if you can pay for it, like that's not necessarily going to catch our eye. Summer programs that are competitive, have an application process, you've secured a scholarship to or something like that, okay, starts to make a little bit more of a difference. That's my extra piece.
Awesome.
I think also really quick, don't underestimate family responsibilities. Sometimes students aren't able to get as involved into, clubs and organizations because maybe you're taking care of younger brothers and sisters, or elders in your family, or cousins, or whatever it may be. Maybe all the things that you have time for, you would like to get involved in, but you have family responsibilities. And that to us does not mean you're washing the dishes every night, but you're actually taking care of people. You're taking time out of your evening, which could be spent maybe doing clubs and activities or working part-time, or maybe the only things you're able to do is work part-time and take care of family. So those types of things we still consider as things that you do outside of the classroom. And there are ways, when you're showcasing your activities, we're not expecting leadership in every single thing, but maybe you can showcase how you've, honed in on your leadership skills without being president of an organization. Maybe you were the secretary, or maybe you were, maybe not in a leadership role, but you exhibited leadership skills. You have to find a way to play to your strengths and showcase your skills and what you've done with your time in those organizations and things you've been a part of.
That's great. All right, I'm going to transition into kind of our last tier of questions, and this is going to be more institutional fit. And I think we're all speaking the same language, so I think this is going to go great. All 3 of you would end up on a lot of Google lists, right? Like if most of our students are just searching like best engineering and putting it into Google, right? But Ann Arbor is different from Western North Carolina, which is different from the Mississippi Delta. These are all different regions of the country, different attitudes on campus, different social political climates, right? Like outside of rankings, which can sometimes feel like a lazy way to build a college list. What are beyond selectivity? What are ways a student can better understand what it means to differentiate Tulane from Wake or Michigan from UNC, right? Like, although you sit next to other schools in rankings and have similar, Google outcomes, like what can you arm students and families with to understand what does it mean to ED at Wake? Like, and how do I know so strongly about that as opposed to the school that's one step above it in some ranking I searched? So can you speak to us a little about what that feels like, how to seek out that fit?
So I always like to tell students that we all have pretty brochures. We have amazing tableware. When we come to our high school visits and college fairs, we've done our due diligence. We know our institutions. We're able to share that with you. But it's also important to acknowledge that our institutions aren't for everyone, and that's okay, right? I like to highlight to students that we have a motto, Pro Humanitate. It's a motto that we live by as an institution. And we look to develop good, wholesome human beings at the end of the day, students who are going to give back to their community beyond the Wake Forest walls, right? And so it's not enough to say, I want to be an engineering major. That's great. That's wonderful. There are lots of other institutions that you could do that at. But how do you want to use engineering and also use your Pro Humanitate spirit to leave the world a better place than how you found it, right? Or leave our campus a better place than how you found it, or contribute to the campus community beyond, right, Wake Forest, but Winston-Salem, right, or in North Carolina. And so that, I think, is a way that we distinguish who we are as a campus, as a community. We're not just looking for students who want to collect as many service hours, but what does it mean to live out a Pro Humanitate spirit? I think about an example in our campus garden, and we teach students a lot about food insecurities here in North Carolina. And being in the western part of the state is very different than being in metropolitan areas like Raleigh and Charlotte that maybe have a different experience for those with food insecurity. But nonetheless, here you have a well-developed area with a college and university and a number of colleges and universities in the area. And if you go about 10 minutes in either direction, you run into what's called food deserts. And so how are students navigating that, addressing that? How are we as a community looking to build opportunities for sustainable living and education and also food security? And so our students go out into the community and they build community gardens and they help navigate that. They teach young children. And it's a full commitment. It's not just learning about it, but it's also thinking about your impact in the larger space. We are a food composting campus. Many campuses have moved in that direction. And it started with a conversation from students who said, why are we not doing more to help protect Mother Nature? If we don't begin that process now, there may not be a Mother Nature to take care of in the long run. And so those are the conversations that our students are thinking about, and how they can leave the world a better place is something that's important to them. And it's important to us as a campus community. So think about the type of institution that you want to go to and think about what distinguishes them. Because again, we all have pretty brochures and all these wonderful pieces that we hope that you collect when you're visiting with us and at college fairs and so on. But what else is there? Like, what else do you want as part of your college experience? And if you want an institution that's going to develop you as a whole person, then Wake could certainly be a good fit.
Yeah, taking it a little bit to the next level, that's a big part of this. I do think this generation applying is in almost a better standpoint to really be able to learn in more in-depth and almost authentic means and media. All of our institutions have innumerable virtual programs for you to connect with, and that was not necessarily the case even 5 years ago. And these programs aren't just all someone going through a PowerPoint. They're panels with current students, specific majors and combined programs, and asking them, to Karen's point, what are you doing with this degree in the community around you? And so in some ways, how does that make you feel fully self-actualized or spark joy or whatever it is? But you'll be able to, I think, gain that experience in more authentic ways. You're all in 9th, 10th, and 11th, so you're starting this process quite early, and that's great. It means you have more time to actually have these sort of conversations. All of our offices also have student ambassadors who are not paid or compensated to talk to you about their experience, and you can filter through websites like Welcome to College and places like that, where you can filter through a student's, two majors and a minor and their different extracurricular interests and all those different sort of things, to see if, there's enough of a matchup for you. I think any of our college campuses, and pretty much any higher education institution around the US is going to be pretty progressive, but also quite open to dialogue and debate. I think that's a big part of challenging your views, making you confident about your value systems and your beliefs, is to be able to talk about things openly, debate them, respect other people's opinions, but also become more and more confident in your own. So try to have those more authentic interactions, especially in a process that can sometimes seem like hurry up and wait, or just like check this box, check that box. The more you can engage, the better for you. But then also, ideally, you'll get past a bunch of those experiences. And when it comes to the supplemental essay, you'll have a really firm idea of what you should write, or what your narrative voice should be, or a couple of different topics to build on in those essays, because you'll have a more of an idea for the soul of a place.
I like that. Soul of a place. Soul of a place. The soul of the place in Ann Arbor is Zingerman's Deli, Jenna. I don't know if you agree with me. I think that's the soul of Ann Arbor.
Yes, it is. Zingerman's Deli and Zingerman's Roadhouse.
What about the soul of Michigan?
I would say Michigan is a place where people really feel like it's going to be competitive once you get there. It's a really big place, 34,000 undergraduate students. So naturally, students are going to assume when they come to campus, everybody's against me. Nobody wants to help me. And that could not be further from the truth. Michigan is a place, while yes, you will be challenged academically, you'll be met with an equal amount of academic support to match that academic challenge. So you're required to meet with your academic advisors, once a semester. We have all these different organizations that you can join. So I think Michigan really is a place where, if you let it can expose you to so many different new ways of thinking, meeting new people. To Karen's point, every institution is not going to be the best fit for you. So if you are a student that isn't really, wanting to get yourself out there and meet new people, then you might want to consider other options, because Michigan is a place that you're going to kind of be forced to do it in the best way, right? Meeting new people, getting involved are all things that we pride as part of the student experience. Having students that are actively involved on our campus, students that are able to express their voices, students that are able to take advantage of academic opportunities, study abroad, internships, research are all things that are going on at Michigan. And so when it comes to fit, we do offer virtual options. And if you're exploring right now and looking at different schools, we offer virtual options. If you wanted to come and visit campus, we do those all year round campus tours, information sessions. So there's always some place where you can kind of get that Michigan experience if you're willing, if you're wanting to come to campus. But you'll also see me at the college fair. Like, I'm out here in Chicago, all around the city. So you can get in touch with me that way, or you can go to campus. We're about 5 hours away from Chicago. You can also take the train, so it's really easy to get back and forth. But I think that if you open yourself up to the new experiences and open yourself up to what Michigan really has to offer you, you will not regret it. Every student that I've connected with, all of my classmates who went to Michigan when I was in high school, really enjoyed their experience and really enjoyed the fact that Michigan is a place that is very collaborative, not competitive. Like, everybody is here to help you out. And, when it comes to class sizes, we intentionally make first year math and first year writing courses capped at 18 students to ease your transition onto campus. So yes, we're a big place, but there's so many ways that we help make our campus feel smaller, and to make it more tolerable for those that might be a little bit shy at first. But Michigan has a way of bringing out the best in you. And I truly, wholeheartedly think that's part of what makes us so unique.
Yeah. I'm going to sneak one more question in, because I know we're right up against it, and I appreciate you all. We're on this theme of authentic applications and finding what feels right, and that connection, that almost like a relationship. You're almost looking for that relationship between the college and the student. As our young learners are figuring out what they're going to do next, I think there's a lot of unnecessary pressure that they either put on themselves or they feel from society at large to have their life sort of mapped out, right, at 16 or 17. When, I don't know, I'm in my 40s and I'm still sort of figuring that path out. Can you speak to each of your universities? I can speak for our flagship university, which is our most popular app receiver from DePaul. they will read specifically by major and by college, right? And that's not the case at every school. So it puts a little extra pressure on a business kid or an engineering kid or a computer science kid, right? Coming in the front door. But for students that on either side that are either yes, like I'm engineering all day, or I don't know, like I kind of like a lot of things, or no thing, I don't know. Like, can you talk to us about what that looks like for the student to try to figure out their path when they're entering your university? Is it a challenge for a student who's selecting a more selective major per se? You know what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Tulane does not read or admit by major. If you're admitted to Tulane, you're essentially admitted to all 75 majors and programs. You continue to have access to the different majors and the different courses once you're on campus. So just because you end up declaring a single or double major between something like biomedical engineering and art history, that does not preclude you from also taking psychology or sociology classes because they're of interest to you. So I think that's a Tulane hallmark, and I think something we emphasize in the curriculum, and certainly that we're proud of, that we are very open in that way. Now, the university, again, is thinking about itself, right? And filling the perfect number of spots and the perfect number of spots in each program. And so it does vary from year to year, from early action to regular decision, as to where a couple of niche spots might help one or two students get in this way or the other. But that's really out of your control. And if you focus too much on things like that, you're not putting together the best and most authentic application. For students who come in undecided, which is also perfectly welcome, our advising office talks about walking students really through three things. So what are you interested in? And it's you, not your parents, right? So what are you interested in or stimulated in? And that's going to be a pretty broad range of things. Maybe considering your high school might only teach, 20 different topics, and universities have 75, 100, 150 majors. So what are you interested in? What are you good at? Because you can be really interested in medicine, but no good at organic chemistry, and it's probably just not going to work out. So you have to have some sort of skill base for some of these things. And then the third piece, sort of what contributes to a livelihood or some sort of life post-graduation that you see for yourself. It's not picking a major for a job, but it's seeing how a major in something like the fine or performing arts will potentially pair with a minor in a different area to open up several different career options. And so you get walked through those things, but for the most part in admission, we're major agnostic.
If I can add a few things, I think for our students, it's important to know that, when we're working with a student, we want them to do well at our institutions. And as a liberal arts institution that's focused on an interdisciplinary approach, we want our students to think critically, to be analytical, to probe and prod their peers and their faculty with questions, right? So that they're able to develop their own ideas. At Wake Forest, a student comes in as undeclared undecided until they declare in the junior year, and typically in the end of sophomore into the start of the junior year. And it's important to know this because students may indicate an area of interest on the application, but we know that might change, and that's okay, right? To Paul's point, right? Like, if you're that kind of narrow and focused student, there's a path for you. And if you're an undeclared, undecided student, there's a path for you as well. So it's important to acknowledge that. I often find students will force a major area of interest. So, my mom or my dad or, my sibling did this. And so I have to follow in their footsteps, and it might not be a good fit, and that's okay. It's important to embrace this part of the process. I will use this opportunity to highlight the Career Development Center at Wake Forest and at all of our institutions. You might come in with an idea and that might not work out, and that's okay, right? Be open to change. and seek out the support from the individuals who can share, okay, if this didn't work out, what can possibly be a path for you as a student to be successful. And so our career development center has dedicated career counselors, so they work with students one-on-one as early as the first day of classes. They offer career treks for students, so you can go to a metropolitan area and think about a variety of different careers. So if you go on a career trek to New York City, you might be with business majors who are working in the financial district. You might be with students who are interested in the theater and arts. You might be with other students who are interested in social change and social advocacy. And so you get to learn about a variety of different areas of interest, not necessarily focus the dynamic on a particular major, but what you hope to be a part of, what you hope to engage in beyond the classroom experience, and certainly after graduation. So be open to change. That's a part of the journey. And don't be afraid to pivot. If we've learned anything through the COVID pandemic, it is that pivoting is a necessary part of life, and that's okay. We will embrace it, and we will be part of that experience together.
And real quick, just rounding things out, Michigan, depending on the school or college that you apply to, that is going to determine whether or not you are admitted to a specific major. If you're applying to our liberal arts college, no, we don't admit to majors. Everybody is undeclared the first year, whether you have your major picked out or not. You can declare your major at orientation if you're ready. If you're not ready, you have 2 years to figure it out. For engineering, all first year students do not have a major. Every engineering student decides in the second year. But for our programs like music, theater, and dance, or our School of Kinesiology, or any of our talent-based units along those lines, business, obviously you will be a business student. Nursing, you're a nursing student. But for music, theater, and dance and our those specific majors, you are actually admitted to a major, because the dance curriculum looks a lot different than the musical theater curriculum. It's all in the same school, but it's just depending on where you're applying to. So you are applying to a specific major for the performing arts majors. But for most of them, you just are admitted to the school, then you choose.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Gang, this was excellent. I thank you for all your time. Samantha Mondro, who you can't see, is behind the scenes. She's been working the dials. I think this is our first live there we go. This is our first live webinar, so we're loving the work. Thank you, Mondro. Appreciate you. So last bit I'll give to our speakers, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order of your mascot. So I'm going Deacon, Green Wave, Wolverine, in that order. Best bit of advice you can give to a young person who is considering what the next stage of their life could look like, right? I mean, Karen, you're perfect. I mean, you have that person in your house, right? So what are you telling your child? And then make it around the horn, and we'll say goodnight to everybody.
All right, I have advice for the students and the parents.
Perfect.
For the students with us tonight, remember that this is an opportunity for you to showcase your best self. And sometimes you may not know what that best self is just yet, and that's okay. You're going to embrace this process and all that comes with it. It can seem like a roller coaster ride at times, but if you truly engage this process, you're willing to ask the tough questions, you're really willing to reflect and take the time to understand who you are in this moment and throughout this process, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised in the end when you select your home for the next 4 years. And parents, I know it is really hard. As Dean of Admissions, I have to take that hat off when I come home, and I have to be mom when we're having the conversation. Hey, hey, like, what do you think about this? What's your thought process for this particular area of interest? We went to a college fair on Saturday. We went to the local NACAC college fair, and I stood back at every college table. I did not go up and, try and fill out the card for my child or ask the questions to the reps. I allowed my child to lead the conversation. And that's an important part of this process, because when they go to college, you will not be there to do their laundry. You will not be there to do their homework. You will not be there to, reach out to the faculty member and ask for the makeup work because they forgot to go to class, right? So embrace this process as a parent. Know that you've created the foundation for your child to be successful, and and be okay taking a step back. It is hard, trust me, I know. But again, you have to trust in this process, and you have to trust that your child is going to make the best decision for them at the end of it all. Have affordability conversations, make sure you're having open and transparent communication, and most importantly, trust the process.
Great. I really advise students to try as much as possible to stay organized in this process. It's really easy to lose track of the variables, of the deadlines, of all of that, whether it's Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. I really do think some sort of program like that can be of big benefit to you. And remember to take notes. Your parents are going to take you to visit various college campuses. People are going to come visit your high school. You'll have a lot of conversations. And if you're able to keep a couple of notes from each interaction as to what really resonated with you, it will be so much more useful once you get to either an interview or the supplemental statement or something like that. You can also easily keep track of various deadlines, requirements, and things like that. So organization is really helpful. And then I guess my parent piece or something like that would be to figure out a night of the week, at least one, maybe even 6 out of 7, to put a moratorium on the college discussion at home or at the dinner table or whatever it is, that there will just be some time that you don't talk about it at all. And your child, you can enjoy your last year with your child, I'm a tearjerker, and your child can enjoy the really wonderful high school experience that they're having and you are paying for.
I think my last piece of advice would just be to have fun with the college admissions process. And I know that might sound so counterintuitive, but really have fun with it. You're applying to all these amazing institutions. And I think that students can sometimes put too much pressure on themselves to, try to put their best foot forward or focus so much on, what they're trying to communicate and what they're saying. And remember that we are human. We are behind the scenes, like as your admissions counselors or whoever your admissions counselor is for your school that you're applying to, they are a real person. And the goal is just to get to know you as much as we can. And I think what I said earlier is another big piece of advice. There's more than one way to get to where you want to be. If you are not admitted, that is not the end of the world. And if you'd like to transfer, consider transferring to wherever it is that you want to go. I think sometimes students think that, oh, I didn't get into Michigan, that means I'll never get in. It doesn't mean that you'll never get in. It just means that you just didn't get in at this point. There's more than one way outside the traditional first year period. If Michigan is where you want to be, we have an amazing transfer process. You can also consider us for graduate school. Like there's so many opportunities for you to become a Michigan Wolverine. And that should be the perspective for, all the places that you're going. And I think for the parents, just to be encouraging. Encourage your students. They are under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress this senior year. There's a lot going on. So just really try to be a source of positivity for them and not a source of stress. I think sometimes parents can put pressures on their students as well to get things exactly right. And to, and I get soft pressure. There's a lot of deadlines. There's a lot of things going at the same time. But at the end of the day, the main goal is just to support your student as much as you can and just to be there for them as they're going through this process. That can do a lot more help than harm. And the goal, is just to be supportive throughout this whole entire process. And don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. You can reach out. You can call the admissions office, reach out to your counselor, call somebody, call Ann Arbor, call Tulane, call Wake. We're all here to help you. And just remember that we're here and we're on your side and we're advocating for you. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the process.
Excellent. All right, that's our program tonight. If you're watching us live, I hope you had a good one tonight. If you're watching us, somewhere in the YouTube universe, great. If you have any questions, always reach out to our team. Jenna, Paul, Karen, thank you so much for your time tonight. Mandro, thanks for all your work behind the scenes. Have a great night, everybody.